Welcome to another episode of Diary of a CIO with the Fruition Group. Today I am joined by Enda Kyne, who's the CIO of FBD Insurance. And Enda, you're very welcome along.
Thanks very much, Stephen.
Absolutely. And then what we try to do with the podcast is, I suppose, understand the people and the real stories behind technology leadership, rather than just what people see on LinkedIn, let's say. So the idea is to get a feel for the individuals, how they've got to where they are, what the story was that brought them to where they are now, and I suppose everything in between as well. So really appreciate you joining us. You and I have known each other a long time, but I suppose your background has come from manufacturing, banking, third level education into insurance now. So there's a real blend across what those areas have been. From your side, were you always building your career to become a CIO or a CIO as you are now? Or is that something that happened over time?
But it's probably a bit of both, Stephen. So I'm actually 40 years formally in the tech world this June. I know I don't look that old, and thank you very much.
You started when you were very young, did you?
For the compliment. Yeah. I suppose there's, I remember saying the harder you work, the luckier you become or luckier you get. So there's a lot of luck in my career, and a lot of really important people who helped me along the way. And I also took some personal risks. But for all intents and purposes, I got into software engineer. I really liked technology, and mathematics was a very strong part of my upbringing. My parents are both teachers, but my dad was fundamentally an engineer. And we tinkered with everything. Like, we took cars apart, we took white goods apart, and there was always a curiosity about tech and physics and all these things. And the funny part was, when I was getting involved in it, my parents couldn't really relate to a technology career. And I was the eldest of four. It was a small town in Middle Ireland, and they wanted me to become a teacher. And I sort of rebelled a bit and said, no, I wanted to do this. So the halfway house it was sort of a suck it and see. Could I, instead of applying for a degree and going for a committed 4 years, would I do a 2-year course first, see how I got on, and then we invest in that? So I did a programming certificate in RTC Dundalk, and El Paso, as we called it at the time. And actually, it was probably the best course I've ever done in my IT career. It was a degree in 2 years. The lecturers were absolutely outstanding. And we focused on things like COBOL and RPG, but it was a very holistic course. And the ideology was we'd move on then to DCU or NHE Dublin at the time. You would start your second year in your degree. And I got that course. And I was always quite entrepreneurial in what I did. And I was doing a lot of projects for the college and doing things in the background. And I got asked to go to what was the first milk round process in the college. That was a small company in Drogheda who were doing a lot of networking solutions into companies in North Leinster. And instead of just doing it to keep the college leaders happy, I ended up taking a job with them. So I started there, and basically I was writing software, I was breaking databases, I was doing early stage analytics for companies like Coca-Cola, huge, like straight in. And the whole ideology was you got to understand business value using tech, because these people wanted answers, outcomes. They want what they call the heartbeat of the business.
Yes.
So I started to learn the business lexicon really quickly. So, and I was also quite unique in my role, and I was the only engineer doing this work. So I was self-directed. And then actually after a year or 2 years, I needed to start to get back into my college team because I wanted to get qualifications. So I moved to the European headquarters for a manufacturing group in Dublin. And from there, I joined Inside Software, which became Hoskins, became Capgemini, where I met my wife, Orla. And I did a huge amount of work on manufacturing distribution. So every Monday to Friday I was gone. I was either west of Ireland, UK, Germany, and just basically project management, software analysis, and also coding and putting in systems. So we did everything in those days. I got what I would regard as a very lucky break in that I joined Vision Consulting, the very famous Billy Glennon and the crew. And I started their Belfast operation in 1990. And I started working then, doing a lot of work for Ulster Bank up in Belfast. So on and off between 3 and 6 years, in and out of there, working with Lakeland Dairies, Bank of Ireland. And that got me into the banking scene. But more importantly, it got me into the structure of what was Anderson Consulting's Method 1. So most of senior vision people were ex-Anderson, And so I came with an entrepreneurial can-do, get stuff done. So delivery was the impact, but actually I got to learn how to do it properly. And that was instrumental. In fairness to Vision, I went back, I did a diploma at night in advanced programming in Trinity. And then I did my degree at distance learning in DCU, and that took another 5 years. So as I traveled the world doing projects, I was studying, fly back Friday night, you're in all day Saturday in tutorials out in Glasnevin and DCU.
Yeah.
And you got that. But the interesting takeaway from that was a lot of my course colleagues in Dundalk had gone on to do their degree. And when they came out, a lot of them joined Vision, and I was their manager. So
yeah,
no,
well, you were in a state of continuous
Yeah.
improvement throughout.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So it was always the balance of education is really important, but education with work experience is equally more important.
Yeah.
So that actually accelerated my career really quickly. So I would often say that I've 20 years consulting and I've 20 years this side of the desk, purely by accident, actually. And we can cover the story, but it was always a journey of where's it taking me, what's happening, how do we do things. And a lot of it was when I left Vision, I got a request from an organization who were going through a lot of change. And they had heard of my skills in terms of tech business, but also the ability to fix big things in trouble. And I started to develop that ideology, around the mid-late 90s. So I rarely applied for a job. It mostly has sort of, would you come and look at this and are you interested? So that's sort of how the career has developed in that direction.
No, fair play. And obviously then you joined Bank of Ireland directly, rather than through consultancy. But at that point then, I suppose, what did the operations piece that you learned in BOI, what did that teach you? Because they have a manufacturing environment. It's just a very different style of manufacturing environment. So what did that teach you as you merged technology and your manufacturing background to come into a regulated financial services industry?
Yeah, it was an interesting move. That was around 2006, and I'd gone through startup phases, and I'd bought and sold companies and done loads of different things. And in early June 2006, I got a call asking me what I was doing, and I was actually looking for a gig and doing some stuff. And they had a Sarbanes-Oxley program, which is obviously a huge compliance program, 322 people it was going over the edge of a cliff. And I got asked would I go in and just have a look at it for a couple of weeks. And I said, I will, but I know nothing about Sarbanes-Oxley, and my DNA doesn't really
align with regulation.
Regulation, yeah, a bit of a maverick. So I went in and looked at it. It became obvious very quickly, just most things have 2 or 3 things to go wrong. So that became a year's gig. And at the end of the year, I spent a lot of time in and out of the top floor in Bank of Ireland headquarters, got to know some very senior, the group executive leaders, same as all of us, just have different problems. It's really interesting takeaways in life, what people are dealing with. And they asked me would I join. And I had said at the time, I didn't see a rationale for me to joining. I didn't feel I fitted in with a classic banker type career, and they had said they wanted people they could parachute around to do change. So I did change basically I just walked all over Ireland, the UK on different things in trouble. And then I said, well, could I actually get involved in running the business as well? And predominantly was IT based into operations, Ireland and UK. Spent a good bit of time over and back to India. So the big thing for me that came out of that time was tech is a small part of operations. Like really, it's the individual's disposition to fulfilling a commitment for a customer. And I know banks and insurance companies get all sorts of funny things in public. Bank of Ireland are very customer centric, no more than FBD. Like they really do care for their customer, and you could see that in what people are doing. And the big thing that I tripped across really was we would look at a lot of improvement programs, and you would have 30, 40, maybe 50 different things you want to do. And the typical ideology would be, we'll do another big program or we'll buy some new software. Yeah. But actually the real improvements were small tweaks. To a little bit of how a product worked. But mostly it was how we interacted with our customers, how we informed them of what we're doing, and how we process things in the background. So I think that one takeaway was really is tech is a part of a successful business. It is not the business. It's becoming more and more influential in business. And number 2 is the ops teams planned everything. They measured everything. They were really quick to look at trends, small idiosyncrasies in how customers behave, staff behave, and they would deep dive it really fast and fix it.
Yeah.
But they had very much a Lean Six Sigma. We are in charge. We were going to get it done. And I suppose also is for most businesses, that person who's normally fairly quiet, who comes in and does the same work, mostly the same work all day, every day, Groundhog Day stuff, they're the secret sauce of every business. Without those people committed, you cannot deliver a business outcome. It's just not possible.
No, absolutely. And so you spend that time in Bank of Ireland, then I suppose you come out of that with a very different rounded capability, let's call it. And but one would expect you to stay maybe financial services, maybe in that space, but you go and flip reverse it again and end up in FMCG. I suppose yet again manufacturing, but you spend some time at Dairygold before our two paths meet, and we'll come to that in a minute. But you spend some time in Dairygold, I suppose working in a yet again a consultancy manner, coming in to try and help them with something that's gone awry, I suppose.
Yeah. So funny enough, one of my last gigs in Bank of Ireland, as it happened at the time, was I'd outsourced a huge amount of work and we'd repositioned businesses and business models. And the next one was change in IT. Yeah. And I had sort of, after 7 years, I sort of get a 5-year itch anyway. And after 7 years, there was a little bit of actually, I really enjoyed here, loved the people, but actually I had an itching to do something a bit bigger. And actually what I wanted to do a bit bigger was to start looking at delivering banking technology in the cloud. Obviously haven't done that since, but started to look at that, and I put a good bit of my own money into it at the time. Okay. And much to my wife's consternation. But in the middle of it, I got a call from an old colleague, similar thing to the June thing that happened, said, we have a client here who's invested tens of millions in a platform and it's not working, and the senior IT management have actually got really tired of this and left. And it's getting very, very adversarial and quite tense and legalistic.
Okay.
Would I go down and look at it? So basically it was, again, bring the suitcase, move down to Mitchelstown. Loved it, like Dairygold, everything is with a hurley. They're customer focused, food focused, high quality focused, but they have a certain way of negotiating. And between the longs and the shorts is, a supplier had promised something, they negotiated what they thought was something different, and in the middle they didn't meet. So what I did is I basically sorted out the middle, and once we got emotions dropped and we got back into pragmatic conversations, it didn't take a whole heap to try and to fix this. So we got it back on back in a level playing field, and actually then bringing some more of the operation side, a lot more of the data analytics side, and also how you could get better value out of your data. I ended up staying for a year with Dairygold to actually start to implement a whole lot of business change for them. Jim Wolf, CEO, Michael Hart, who was the CFO, is now the CEO. Great minds, lovely people to work with. Like, you could shoot the breeze with them and stuff. And I had an option to stay there, but really I was working away from home. My kids were early teenagers, and they often reminded me that you're not home, Dad. You can't tell us what to do. So we had a few fun conversations there. But basically, I worked with them. We hired a replacement at CIO, and a lovely West of Ireland man at the time. And since then, we've got an old colleague, Louise, who's now CIO there and doing a tremendous person, doing a great job. And the big interesting thing for me was, like in banking, a change takes 3 to 6 months to manifest itself. In manufacturing, it's the next hour. So you could read, it's an interesting environment about when you look at planning change and software and what you're doing. There is a bit of fun and there's a bit of an adrenaline rush about immediate change, but you can do immediate damage too. So it brings a lot into software quality, getting it right, done right first time. All those ideologies, no different than banking. It's just how it manifests itself is different. And really, after the year, I came back and we had a chat then, which was in higher education, about a really good international university, 6 countries, 6 different systems. Finding it really hard to make ends meet. They could not get any change through. I suppose software costs were rising year on year, but no actually positive outcomes. And got stuck into that and was enjoying that. And then got a knock on the door in 2016 after 3 years in this lovely organization. I really loved it there, actually, lovely people. but it was back into the complexity of financial services. And financial services in a regulated environment is unbelievably complex. And to me, the intellectual challenge and also the opportunity to use a good investment. In fairness, banks, insurance companies have a lot of capital. They use it very wisely. And that was important too, was about actually being able to get real money to make real change. And that brought me into FBD in early 2017. So I'm my 10th year now with FBD.
That 5-year itch didn't quite make its mark in FBD, but I remember, I suppose, engaging with you and our first back in 2013, I think it was when we were first sort of chatting, and through that process of RCSI, there being this, I'll be honest, some of our candidates were very sort of consultancy, and I mean, sort of big four consultancy backgrounds. And I think it quickly became apparent to I don't think I'm being unfair in saying what would have been quite a conservative sort of upper management layer, that they needed something different. And I think that's what you brought. And I think, us knowing each other over the last 13, 14 years, I think what I've noticed about you is that what you see is what you get. There's not really two sides to Enda Kyne. It's, you get a very professional person, but someone who's very human as well. It's, you don't have one side of you that's, outside of the office and one side that's inside the office. You get to know you as a person. You can respect that,
Yeah, no, I'm very straight on stuff.
Yeah.
And in some organizations might be regarded as overly direct.
Yeah.
But I'm very clear when I go into an organization, if the fit's not there, I can change my behavior to suit things. I can change what I'm doing, but I'm going to change my personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fairness, if there's a match in what they're looking for and where I'm coming from, then we're good. I mean, for instance, I'm very comfortable in check and challenge conversations. I'm comfortable in sometimes in quite strong conversations, but I'm there as a team player. I'm not there to dominate. I'm not there to necessarily win.
Yeah.
For me, the whole thing is I'm not going to sit in the corner and be quiet. I have a view. I'll express it using facts and data as much as possible. And I'll also agitate for what's the right thing to do, because integrity for me is hugely important. When I look back in life, I've never been on a failed project. Thank you, touch wood. And that's because when something doesn't look right, we call it out, even if it causes pain for everybody around. And sometimes it does cause pain, especially when I'm parachuted in to sort stuff out and you're calling out, say like how did this happen? Like, this is a bit mad.
Yeah. But I don't think you can have transformation without change or without pain, to be honest. I've yet to see it anyway, because, you've got at least three sides to transformation, which is your systems, your business, and your people. And one of them are not good. Either your systems are broken and the people and the business are fine. The business needs major updating or major surgery to get it to where it needs to be, or you're confident that you've brought in new systems. You've got the business where you hope it would be in terms of the commercial aspects of it, but the people don't necessarily want to change, and you've got to look at that. So I suppose that leads me into asking you in FBD, what would you say is a major transformation program that you've been sort of seeing over, that internally they would say, yeah, there was a real shift in how we've done things from before that to after that? Is there something you'd pull on from?
Yeah, it does. So one of the things that happened for FBD, they had two things in the 2014 to 2016 timeframe that just didn't go well. So one is Kyne Insurance at the time had dropped the pricing of general insurance basically too low. Loads of insurers made significant losses then, including FBD. So they had to restructure their business, and some leadership members actually lost their roles over that. And the other is they invested a couple of tens of millions in a system that at the time wasn't fully developed. So they bought a very complex general insurance platform, brought in another third party to work with them on it, and the platform was probably 40% vaporware, didn't exist. So you had a company from Netherlands actually rapidly trying to develop a product with a third party who had 90 engineers on a project, and FBD actually trying to get off an old platform and just get somewhere safely. So the big thing for me at the time was When I came in, my understanding was there was about 2 years work left. Everything was in a fairly stable place. They were generally up to date on what they needed to do in terms of having a modern platform. And I was only in a week and realized that actually most of those paradigms didn't exist. What they had already done on the newish system was we just threw it away. It wasn't functioning, and they hadn't invested in their core platform. Like, they were years out of date and many different things. So what I did at the time was I just put on the brakes and just stopped everything. Exited the third party, so 90 staff out, and we just said, right, back to first principles. What are we doing here? Every penny of IT investment was going into the move on the platform. There was no other part of the business was getting anything. So sales, claims, it was purely an underwriting policy administration platform. And the big change, I suppose, we brought in was, rather than just doing a lift and shift of an existing insurance product from an old system to a new system, we said, what should the new products look like?
Yeah.
So we redesigned from 53 products down to 17, and we brought in a huge amount more sophistication into the new products. And what that means is, in terms of insurance pricing, you could have a much more appropriate and fair price to every customer there, rather than a blunt price shared across everything. And rather than deep diving the whole thing in insurance, that's hugely important, and it brings an awful lot more fairness. So that was one part of the platform. And we've been at that for a number of years. So we really allowed us to build in a lot more sophistication, complexity into insurance products, but also the data is much richer. So we could actually guide the business. So in normal cases, they would wait 6 months and look backwards and say, how did it go? And that's an extremely dangerous thing to do in a risk-based business. Whereas we can do that daily, and we can do it many times daily. So that transparency given to the business, hugely important. I think the second thing is, most details and data about customers are in people's heads. And we basically won hearts and minds, and actually invested heavily in a customer relationship management system, CRM, in Microsoft Dynamics. And we started to get next best action going. And we started to get accuracy and up to date. So for a customer, ringing, calling, writing, emailing, everybody knew where the customer was. Instead of asking why you contacted me, small stuff, you actually fulfill the outcome. And then in the background, through COVID, we completely changed end user computing platforms. So we actually gave everybody a proper laptop, all the ancillary equipment, created home offices for everybody, invested in all of that. And that has been instrumental in allowing people to actually do hybrid working, but it's changed the tenor of the organization. And it's changed for the better, actually, because you can see the commitment flowing from staff. You know, and something now there's downsides as well to it. We might be able to cover that. But actually, when you're saying to people, you're a grown adult, you're an adult colleague, you're committing to get the outcomes you need for your job, and all the jobs are very specialized. Having systems that work, fairly clear and easy to use technology, end user compute, be it iPads or laptops and phones, easy to work, always up to date. That actually makes the base that people move off much easier.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of a whole lot of different things, but most notably is we fixed the main system that guides the company. It's easier to use. Everybody knows how to use it, and they get value out of it. That's probably the biggest thing looking back, and that's taken not far of 7 of the 10 years to get it done. Yeah, so 2 years to go, my arse, like it's been 7 years. It's a long time. The reason partly I've stayed so long is I really like the people. I like the why of our business. We are a very genuine business with high integrity. We pay our claims, we look after our customers. But also for me, my commitment was we need to get legacy gone, new platforms there, ready for the future. And, we're by and large getting there. So I stay and deliver my commitment. That's probably my ingrained DNA. When I say I'm doing it, I'll do it, and I'll stick at it until it's done.
You're a man of your words.
Exactly.
You mentioned something there. Well, first of all, you said it's great news that people stay so long. Not so much necessarily for a recruiter, when we're looking to fill some roles with you. But from the other side of it, you also said that I suppose you've got tenure there with yourself. You're there 10 years now. I think one thing that we could draw to is the fact that there's a really low level of attrition within FBD as well, and that has all of its benefits. But I suppose, how do you manage it from a I suppose, a career progression point of view with people? How do you manage it when they've been there the length that they have, for them to feel, or for you to get the change from them as you want to move the business along? And also then we'll the conversation that comes up in every conversation these days around AI, but what does that mean for your implementation or your ideas for AI as things go forward?
Yeah. So there's just on 1,000 staff in FBD, and between technology and operations, I have about 270 permanent staff and another 40, 50 contractors. That's with us all day, every day, and then we have third parties who work for us. So I've got quite a large section of the universe that's working with us.
Mm.
The big thing we have in the organization, we invest an awful lot in alignment. So we agree with our board, and we have two separate boards, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it looks, what does success look like. We live that constantly at leadership level, and every quarter we're constantly going back to our teams. What are we doing? What's the strategy? How is it working? What's everybody's contribution to that? So clarity is really important, and we prioritize based on that clarity. So I have two sets of priorities. One is business priority and what we do, and the other is risk assessment, because obviously I'm carrying, in terms of technology, a huge impact risk.
Yeah.
So I have two different lenses, and we work off those. For our own teams, invest a lot of time in town halls. We spend a lot of time talking about what we're doing. We celebrate what's going well, and we share lessons learned about what we might be struggling with. I also do things called skip level meetings. So everybody gets 3 to 4 occasions a year in a small group without their team leader manager, where they can ask anything, they can say anything, we can talk about anything, and it's Chatham House rules, everything goes. I use that very much for engagement. So it's not just communicating one way, it's actually getting real good feedback. And also it teases out, you might feel that we've expressed what we're doing on a project or a program really concisely and very clearly, but sometimes it doesn't land like that. And people can ask back. And in those conversations, then some people will say, well, when I finish this big project or this program, what am I going to be doing next? So I might be an ADF person, I might be PL SQL, I might be using Python or Angular or all the different things, or I might be a tester. And actually, you get to get under the skin of what are they really concerned about, or how do we properly communicate what's coming next. Big challenge with our attrition is less than 1%. It's normally people retiring rather than people. So it's phenomenal. Now, what it does bring in, it brings a challenge. Normally, if your attrition is around the average 6-7%, you get movement and people get career movement.
Yeah.
So we've had to change the orientation of what's your next project. So what we look at it is sort of a career stretch. Is if you're a dyed-in-the-wool engineer, how can we get you more working on an architecture aspect, or how can we get you working on preparing software and systems to go into service? So it's all the time sort of widening the layers that gives you a more rounded career, and that's allowed us to actually grow wider skill sets. Nearly back to my own starting days, because we did everything, Whereas actually, I think modern days people get pigeonholed into a particular role very quick.
Well, it was the point of an analyst programmer back in the day, wasn't it? When an analyst programmer did 2 or 3 jobs, really,
Exactly,
and that's kind of gone.
And also, you're actually you're your own agile team. You're your own scrum. You're passing stuff to yourself.
Yeah.
So, but by stretching those things, I think that the next big onset really is AI. I think, interestingly, as a team, we're probably the biggest bringer of change to the organization. And actually, I think tech teams are the most resistant to change of any teams. And actually, and they're stubborn about not changing. So there's a lot of
absolutely.
A lot of things.
They're not afraid to let you know they don't want to do this.
Let you know. They have some unique ways of actually demonstrating that. But anyway, it's good natured. But in terms of where does AI come from? I mean, we are very cognizant that we have proofs of concept, proofs of value in AI. We're investing in the plumbing at the moment. There is no specific AI use case that sort of resonates as a humdinger for us as an organization. There are crumbs coming of what we're looking at, and we're taking our time. We're not in a hurry with it. In terms of IT, and certainly in the development life cycle, you can see how AI can help us go from fleshing out requirements, getting artifacts done so we meet our governance standards, pre-preparing test scripts, even helping in testing automation, speeding up code development, all that sort of stuff. So that's there, and for the techies, it's vibrant, because they're getting, so one part of the brain that says, this is really cool, I'm doing something cool, and the other part that says, is this thing going to try and take my job? Right?
Yeah. Is this thing here to get me? And I suppose if we move away from it technically, is obviously you have the ops space, which involves contact center and all that side of things within a company like FBD. I'm assuming that AI either is or will play a part in, improving the prompts that your customer service agents are receiving as part of a call real time to say, you haven't asked about, do they have home, if they're calling about car insurance, we noticed you haven't asked about home insurance or life insurance or pet insurance, whatever it might be. Is that the sort of stuff where you see it playing a part, or is it playing a part for you in that area at the moment?
So we haven't purposely put our toe in the water and doing something there. We are assessing it. So where AI with like, so we have about 450, 480 staff are on calls every day, either in Mullingar in our office, which handles car insurance, home insurance, or in our 34 branches, where it's much more complex. We call it multi-powered farm, multi-powered business. So in reality, and it takes 10 years to get competent like this, it doesn't really matter what you put on screen. But where AI can come into it is, it can actually lift people who are not in the business as long up to a similar level of competency as somebody that's there, by helping them understand and articulate more. They're all trained in actually having the conversation about, look, if you come in for a car policy, we have home, we have multi-product benefits, can we quote you? And they're fairly, that's in the DNA of the people to ask that. But where it lifts us in the standards, number one. And number two is, there's a huge amount of regulation and compliance required for everything we do. All our interactions have to hit a certain way of speaking, certain set of outcomes. And what allows us to do is allows us to measure, or will allow us to measure in call, whether somebody's actually hitting those outcomes. Because what we do is, I have a team actually examines all the calls historically, and we do retraining and all that sort of stuff. We prefer to see it as a much more positive, holistic, and a positive reinforcement to our selling colleagues that you're doing really well, you just need to lift this bit. So that's there constantly. The second part that's there is, sometimes sales agents mightn't typically sell a particular type of cover frequently, and a customer comes in with a question, and typically they would have to go to an underwriter, get the answer, and come back to the customer, the prospect.
Yes.
We have a knowledge database that we can do that now in call. So and we've invested in that. We just call it Ask Underwriting, but has replaced 10,000 internal calls a year. I mean, that's huge, and it also means
time efficiency, the customer feeling like they get real-time answers rather than having to wait for a response.
Correct. That's material. It's material to the customer experience or the prospect experience, and it's also the one and done ideology of staff is, I can answer the question for you now with confidence, and you either want to do business with us, or at least you've had good experience asking the questions about what cover we can give and what the price is.
And we see it in our own industry as well. As you can imagine, we spend a lot of the time on the phone talking to candidates, talking to clients, and we're seeing it sort of creeping in now into the same sort of CRM systems and other sort of third-party tools for those sort of conversations, where you're saying, somebody will come in and you'll train them to a standard. Of course, they're going to ask the correct basic questions around the information you want to know about a candidate, but there's a lot of nuance that comes with experience, that comes with lived experience in the recruitment industry, as I'm sure it is in the insurance industry. And AI can help lift that person up a level so that they will maybe sometimes learn to ask that question that they wouldn't have naturally thought about. And then it just becomes part of their psyche. It becomes part of their natural way of talking to people. So it's nearly coaching them real time, which can be a massive benefit. Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you a question around, are you a man to do something right or do something fast, right? But I think you've answered, because sometimes the answer is do it fast. Okay, it's sometimes done is good enough compared to perfect, but I think what you've said there, what you've been telling us about the systems and the length of time you've spent with FBD, getting the core fundamentals right shows that you're a man to do it right, I think, rather than necessarily just do it fast. You know?
Yeah. Although it's interesting, we go through all these psychological assessments and tests, and you look at how, what we do well, what we don't do well. I mean, I've had it right through from Bank of Ireland into FBD, constant. So I'm a do it right and do it fast individual, right? So they're not mutually exclusive. So I have to pick one.
No,
So I picked to do it right, and let's get it right first time. I mean, I would say, hand on heart, we have in the last 3 years little, or actually I think zero, change-related incidents. In a 24/7 complex environment, it speaks to, now that's, I mean, I am only a figurehead in the team, right? Quite a large team, but it speaks to an ideology that says, no, we're doing this right, and we're going to make it right, and we want it to persist right into the future. So, and we drum that in all the time, that, when we're doing it, get it right, move on, next thing, and not be looking over your shoulder to see what's coming after you from the last stage.
What's chasing me? What would you say is the hardest decision you've had to make in FBD that no one will ever see? And I don't know if you can share that or not. Sometimes that's a very personal thing. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's one of those ones where you go, well, I had to do this. I didn't want to do it at the time, or, I had to, eat the frog, as they say. But no one really knows I did that, but it led to X.
Yeah. So probably the one really was stopping all the work to get the orientation right. I mean, at leadership board level, that just caused unbelievable consternation. They didn't know me from Adam. I was only in the door. I'm putting on a break. So that was a defining moment in my relationship with.
You're just looking, going, what is this maniac at? We've just spent millions on this system, and he doesn't want to use it anymore. Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm good at saying no. Right?
Okay.
So I'm confident to say no. And I suppose also is typically when you parachute in to fix stuff, your tenure is normally 3 to 5 years, and they would prefer to see you gone because you have to make tough decisions.
Yeah.
So I think for me, what clicked when I joined was I actually liked the place. So my why mirrored FBD's why. I actually liked, we come together, just up together. So I think the hardest thing for me was I probably was a lot less edgy about doing really interesting things with tech. And I just said, you know what, we have to grind out the right outcome here. So typically after 2 or 3 years, I'd be looking to say, okay, I've done the basics really well, but I've actually done something unique. So, we did a lot of work early on in cloud. I won a European award about cloud trailblazing and all this sort of stuff. I mean, that was interesting, but the main thing was we actually put some of those really interesting technology, things that would build a really interesting CV, to say, no, actually, pull back to speed here a little bit, because my commitment was we bring the business with us to get the outcomes that are right together that deliver our strategy. So that was one. I think the second thing that had come along that people wouldn't spot is, I mean, I mentioned earlier on, I would probably be a little bit of a maverick in my career around obeying rules. I tend to break them more than keep them. And
I can attest to that.
Yeah. And one of the big commitments at leadership level, because as a senior management, you're controlling your environment, you're delivering what you said you're going to do. At leadership, we're chained together. Yeah. And one person in that chain drops the ball, everybody in the chain gets hurt, right? Yeah. So you have to come together. And one of the biggest things we have as an organization is we have our commitment to customer outcomes, the proper use of capital, but that we live our governance. And for me, the whole taxonomy, the whole process of governing things properly, of working through audits, working with compliance, I had to learn it. And I would say hats off to my colleagues in FBD and CEO Tomas. They invested in me as well, because that is a new learned experience. So I spent the last couple of years really deep diving and getting qualifications across those areas, and would say that at a level I'm now actually very good and practitioner. And I suppose how I got through it in my mindset was I focus on this as this is my commitment, it's my delivery. So I spend 60% of my time now really in governance and meetings, in mapping out and demonstrating we've planned it well, we've done it well, it's now in situ well, but actually anybody examining how we've done it can say we have done it appropriately. that's a huge change in my area of expertise. And but it's opened new doors too, Stephen, because I do think for CIOs, CTOs, board positions, even CEO roles now are sort of the next step. Like, we're the biggest area of examination in every company. Nobody really, auditors spend far more time in IT than they do in financial accounts. Not only are we all covering IT, we're covering cyber, IT security, data movement. Like, there's so many moving parts. And maybe, as I've demonstrated in my own career, we're either own part of the business or we're seriously involved in the business.
Yeah.
So actually, you have sight and line of sight of everything that goes on in the place. So, we've all in IT wanted recognition that we are big impact people, but actually it comes with that as a responsibility to do it properly and do it in a governed and a risk controlled way.
Yeah, and especially in the environment that you're in, because of it being so heavily regulated. And I suppose one thing that I'd like to understand from you is, this area moves so fast and yet it moves so slow. We sometimes think, technology is moving at the speed of light. And yes, new ideas, new technologies do come to light. But I think how lots of different areas of technology operate now is very similar to how it operated 15 years ago, but what I would say to you is, what are you doing now that wasn't possible 5 years ago?
I think the sophistication of what's there in software platforms means we can actually switch into new technologies much easier and much quicker. So what it might have taken 4 or 5 years and quite a lot of investment in architecture means we can go to Microsoft, Google, AWS, even software as a service providers, and in 3 months we have a capability live. Now, I do question, is a business in a position to actually move that fast, because their opportunity to articulate and change is not as easy. So we can switch that on really, really quickly. But also interestingly is it's extremely complex knitting all these things together. And I've noticed with AI capabilities and different tooling, especially in cybersecurity, the AIs are falling out with each other. So we're actually getting subtle clashes of systems saying, don't recognize what data or what data stream is coming out of this asset, and I'm shutting it down, and we're sort of saying, okay, right, is that an attack? Has something happened? And actually, it's AI falling out with AI, yeah. So they're interesting things. And I suppose the other thing I'd be worried about going forward is maybe not an appropriate phrase given what's happening in geopolitical things, but we have kill switches for everything. If something is not working in a system, we can stop the system.
Yeah.
We have fallback processes and we have ways of doing things. As you let the AIs and the software as a services in, number one is you're fully dependent on a third party where you'd like to have an idea what goes on in them. You can audit them and all that. You don't really know what's going on, right? You're very dependent. They can go off course very quickly, and their ideology of why they're in business can change very fast, and it goes against ours. Number one,
yeah.
And then the other side of it is that we can find just systems are not working the way you want into the future. So you find you're actually trying to repair things you expected to work because stuff is getting out of kilter. So those side of things are interesting. They bring different challenges, and it's a different way of looking at the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last question for you, okay, and I really appreciate your time. If you could now talk to 18-year-old Enda, right? He's done the leaving certs. He's out flying around in the first car, whatever he's doing at that age, right? Would you, knowing what you know now, say to him that technology was the correct choice and to do it all again, or would you maybe opt for a different path for him?
I still think technology was the right path. I think what I know that 18-year-old Enda wouldn't know is there is a multitude of careers. Like tech is not just engineering. There's a multitude of careers. I'm not worried about AI. I think it'll level out. It's just AI will make you better, faster, and it'll wreck your head as well, and it'll do stupid stuff and it's anyway. So I would say not to be worried about that. I would also say to an 18-year-old me, your network is your future, is a secret sauce.
Yeah.
You must spend time with people. You must learn how to communicate who you are and your ideas and your ideologies well. You must learn to present well, form cogent arguments, and you must work on your ability to say no. I think the biggest thing for anybody is, here's who I am. Here's the 3 things I bring to the table. Do you like them or not? That's great. And if you don't like what you're being asked, to be able to say no. But tech is where stuff is at. With quantum coming along, all these different things. And also, I mean, I have moved from manufacturing distribution. I've gone into software delivery. I've then gone into banking. I've gone into life insurance, general insurance, higher education, recruitment. I've worked in every industry, but I didn't need the ability to understand the industry. I needed the ability to understand how to bring a technology, an engineering, and problem-solving skill set into an environment where, once I'm curious, and always curious, which I am, I can figure out that. I think it's an amazing area to have a career in. I think there's a gift there. And I'd also say to people, if you're unsure, if you can get into a consulting firm, you will learn so much in 5 years, in and out of clients. I mean, it's a really great career to get into, and most people would stay in that career. But you learn how to behave, you learn how to project your messaging, you learn how to figure out what's the real problem here, learn how to frame your messaging, and you actually, they rise you up through the ranks really quickly. And you can't go too far wrong. And I mean, tech person can go into a business role in consulting. Likewise, a business person can go into a tech role. There's variety, and I think going into those, and I've traveled the world in the back of those firms. I mean, the farthest I might get now is Cork, and I'm driving there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second part of that, obviously the parents didn't want you to do this. You went and did the 2 years in college to see how you got on. What's the thinking on what they feel around what it's become for you in that time now?
I suppose they're gone a couple of years now. Got a lot of mercy in the two of them, but they never understood what I did for a living, ever. And I used to just say is I just solved problems. I solved big problems. I help people to actually do things better just using technology, and we leave it at that.
Move on.
Move on. And I mean, I'm a demon for spending money on cars, so I always came with different cars all the time, and have traveled the world, as I said, lived well, and their view was, okay, it must be working because he's not coming looking for money.
He's coming in a new shiny car, and that's something that even I have bonded over. I love a car. So listen, Enda, I really appreciate your time. I knew you'd be a great guest. I knew you'd be able to bring a lot of really good, insightful information, but with a bit of humor as well. And that's always nice when there's the two of them together. So, on behalf of me, on behalf of anybody who's going to be watching this on the different platforms that we put it out on, just like say, really thank you to you for your time and for your insights.
Very good. Thank you, Stephen.
Really.